Anika's heart pounded in her chest. She was only 8 years old, but her mind raced with fear beyond her age. Uncle Kofi's hand lingered on her knee, his eyes staring at her with a strange glint. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body froze. A knot twisted in her stomach as he whispered, "This will be our little secret. My name is Anika, and I grew up in the bustling city of Adjua, a place full of tall buildings, busy roads, and friendly neighbors who always greeted one another in passing. My parents, Pastor Benjamin and Pastor Olamide, led a growing church called Chapel of Hope in the heart of the city. They were both well respected and deeply loved in our community. People would often come to them for prayers, advice, or just a comforting word. I was their only child, and they took care of me the best they could. Even so, their church work kept them busy. They organized prayer meetings, youth groups, choir rehearsals, and often visited members who were sick or in need of spiritual support. Because of this, they weren't home most afternoons, so they hired a tutor to help me with my schoolwork. That tutor was our family friend, Uncle Kofi. He had been close to my parents since before I was born, and everyone trusted him. He had a big smile that seemed warm and welcoming, and he always brought small gifts to our house, maybe a bag of chin-chin or fresh fruit from the market. My parents would say, "Anika, you are lucky to have such a caring teacher." I believed them. I was happy to see a friendly face from church helping me with my math and English lessons after school. It started out well enough. The first few lessons were fun. I enjoyed the way he explained difficult math problems, often comparing them to the price of plantains at the local market or the distances between different parts of Adjua. His stories made learning feel like a game. But something changed after a few weeks. First, it was the way he touched my shoulder, his hand staying there longer than it needed to. Then he began to sit closer and closer. One afternoon, as I was reading a passage from a textbook, he scooted his chair right next to mine. His arm brushed against mine, and my skin prickled uncomfortably. I did not want to believe anything was wrong. He was a respected member of our church. My parents called him brother, and I thought of him like an uncle. So when I felt uneasy, I told myself I was overthinking it. One day at school, we had a lesson on keeping ourselves safe. Our teacher, Miss Dahlia, talked about how no one should make us feel uncomfortable with their touch, especially on private parts of our bodies. I felt a strange tightness in my chest as she spoke. The areas she described were the same ones Uncle Kofi had started to pat or rub while telling me, "You are so special." The weeks passed, and each time I came home, my heart pounded in my chest. I found myself hoping that somehow he would not be there. But every time, I opened the door to find him waiting with the same friendly smile. One afternoon, as soon as the school bus dropped me off, I saw him standing outside our apartment gate. He waved, and I forced myself to smile back. When I walked inside, he locked the door. This simple act made me uneasy. "How was school, Anika?" he asked, placing a hand on my shoulder. I shrugged. "It was fine." "Good," he said, guiding me toward the living room. "Let's study here today. It's more comfortable." We usually studied at the dining table, but I was too scared to protest. I sat on the couch, gripping my notebook. He sat next to me, closer than ever. While I tried to read a passage, he placed his hand on my knee. I froze. He leaned in, whispering, "You trust me, right?" A wave of terror washed over me. "Yes, Uncle," I said softly. He smiled, but it was not the warm smile I used to know. "Good girl. Now remember, this is between us. Your parents will not understand." I wanted to scream, but the words got stuck in my throat. My heart hammered, and my palms began to sweat. "Okay," I said, barely above a whisper. At night, I tossed and turned in my bed, remembering the lesson from school. My teacher's voice rang in my head. "If anyone touches you in a way that feels wrong, tell a trusted adult." But the problem was, I wasn't sure if my parents would believe me. My father always spoke about how kind and faithful Uncle Kofi was, My mother praised him for his devotion to the church. I was just a child. Would they take my word over his? Still, I couldn't keep it inside me any longer. One afternoon, after an especially bad tutoring session where he lifted me onto his lap, I walked to my room, shut the door, and burst into tears. I had to do something. I opened my Bible one my parents had given me on my 8th birthday and slid out a small piece of paper. I wrote, "Mommy and Daddy, I need to tell you something about Uncle Kofi. He has been touching me in ways that make me scared. Please believe me. Please make him stop." My hands trembled as I slipped the note into my mother's prayer journal, knowing she would read it before she went to bed. Then I sat on my bed, my heart racing. Had I done the right thing? That evening, I pretended to do my homework in the living room as my parents returned from a long church meeting. They were tired, but they hugged me and asked how my day went. I just said, it was okay, trying not to burst into tears. We ate a simple dinner of jollof rice, and then my mother took her journal to read and pray. Suddenly, I heard her gasp. "Ben," she called out to my father, her voice shaking. "Come look at this." My father rushed over, and they read my note together. My heart thudded. Would they believe me? Or would they say I was making things up? "Anika, come here," my mother said, her eyes wide and teary. She held out the note. "Is this true?" I swallowed hard, my eyes filling with tears. "Yes, Mommy," I whispered. She pulled me into a tight hug. "Oh, my child, I'm so sorry. Why didn't you tell us sooner?" I was scared, I admitted, trembling. I thought you might not believe me. My father's jaw clenched. He stood up, took his phone, and walked out of the house, pacing up and down the corridor as he made a call. I heard him raising his voice, but I couldn't catch the words. My mother held me close, whispering, "It's not your fault. You did nothing wrong." The next day, my father called some of the church elders to our home. Pastor Benjamin had a reputation for fairness and was known to act quickly when something was wrong. My mother refused to leave me alone, so she stayed close by my side the whole time. I didn't go to school that day. I felt sick and drained, like I had been running in circles all night. All I could think of was the look on my father's face as he stormed outside to call who? The elders? The police? I wasn't sure. By evening, Uncle Kofi was relieved of his duties at the church. My father told me later, "He denies everything, Anika. But your mother and I, we believe you. No matter what anyone else says, we stand with you." Tears of relief streamed down my face. It felt like a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I still felt shaken, but at least I wasn't alone anymore. Word spread quickly in our church community. People noticed that the once popular Brother Kofi no longer greeted people at the door, no longer led youth gatherings, and was absent from choir practice. The rumors began. I overheard people whispering about a big scandal and a serious issue, but nobody seemed to know the details. Some people tried to ask me questions directly, but my parents always shielded me. "She's just a child," my mother would say firmly, "and she has been through enough." My father was even stricter. If anyone has questions, he'd announce they should come to me directly. Despite this protection, I still felt nervous. I didn't like how people stared at me during church services. I wanted to hide behind my mother's wrapper and make myself invisible. But each time I felt that fear rising, I remembered that my parents believed me. That thought gave me courage to stand a little straighter. Eventually, my parents found a counselor named Sister Rosa, a gentle woman who worked at a local center for children. At first, I was scared to talk about what had happened. I didn't want to relive the memories of those tense afternoons with Uncle Kofi. But Sister Rosa spoke in a calm, soothing voice. "It's okay to be afraid," she said, "but you are safe now. Your parents are here to protect you." Little by little, I opened up. I talked about how I felt when he locked the door, how his hands lingered where they should not, and how he threatened me with silence, telling me that no one would understand. "You are not alone," Sister Rosa assured me, placing a hand gently on mine. "And you did the right thing by speaking up. Many children don't get that chance." Her words made me cry, but this time it felt like a healing cry. I let out all the sadness and fear I had kept hidden. News kept spreading in the church. Some members showed support, offering prayers and comforting words. Others whispered in corners, refusing to believe that a devoted member like Kofi could have done anything wrong. That hurt me, but I focused on the people who stood by my family. One afternoon, as I walked with my mother through the church courtyard, I saw a small group of women whispering. One of them raised her eyebrows when she saw me. "Poor child," she said in a low voice. "I wonder if this is all just a misunderstanding." I felt a flare of anger and hurt. My mother paused and turned to them. Her voice was calm but firm. "Anika is our daughter. We stand with her and we believe her. I hope you will also find it in your hearts to protect children in this church rather than question them." Without waiting for a response, she led me away. My chest tightened, but I was proud of my mother. She didn't shout or argue. She simply stated the truth. She believed me. Over the next few months, life changed. The hush around the scandal slowly faded as church members focused on other things. We had new youth leaders and new teachers for Sunday school. Pastor Benjamin and Pastor Olamide adjusted their schedules so they could spend more time with me. They arranged for me to go to an after-school center where I could do my homework with other children, supervised by trained staff. I never had to be alone with a tutor again. My father also insisted on sharing a message with the congregation. He spoke one Sunday morning in a strong voice. "Children are a gift. If they ever say they feel unsafe, we must listen. It is our duty to protect them no matter how trusted the adult in question may be." I smiled a little, grateful he didn't mention my name, but happy he was speaking out. It felt good to know that maybe my story could protect other children, too. Sometimes I still wake up from bad dreams. In them, I'm back in the living room with Uncle Kofi's hand on my knee. But now I know I'm not alone. My parents are here for me. Sister Rosa's door is always open for more sessions if I need them. One morning, after we had all sat down for breakfast, my mother turned to me and said, "Anika, how do you feel today?" I took a deep breath and answered truthfully, "Better. I'm starting to feel like myself again." She smiled and gave me a quick hug. "Good. Always remember, your father and I love you. We will always believe you." That day, as I walked to catch the school bus, I felt warmth in my heart. A wind blew through the streets of Adjua, carrying the sounds of honking cars, street vendors calling out, and children laughing on their way to class. It was the sound of normal life, and I was part of it again. I hadn't lost myself to fear. I had faced it. With each passing day, I grew stronger. And though the memory of what happened stayed with me, it no longer felt like my secret shame. It was something that happened to me, not something that defined me. Today, I stand before you as a child who found the courage to speak out. My parents believed me. My church took action. I received the help I needed. Not every story ends like this, but I want others to know there is hope. If you see a child who seems sad or afraid, please speak to them gently. Let them know they can trust you. If you are a parent, guardian, or teacher, remember that children have fears they may not know how to express. We need to listen, believe, and protect them. Above all, I learned that silence only helps the people who do bad things. When we speak up, we shine a light on the darkness, and it loses its power over us. I am Anika, and this is my story of finding the courage to speak out against what was wrong. My life has changed, but in many ways, it has changed for the better. I am no longer silent. I am no longer alone. I have my parents, my counselor, and a support system that believes me. Thank you for taking the time to listen. If you ever find yourself in a hard situation, please know there are people who will help you, and there is always a way to stand up and speak out. Stay strong. Stay safe, and remember children deserve to be heard, believed, and protected.